You know, when Google first announced Stadia, I was actually genuinely excited. The whole concept of it was pretty interesting. They revealed it earlier this year with the following idea: play any game instantly from any device, removing the need for expensive hardware and allowing you to play on your TV, phone, tablet, PC, basically anything that could run Google Chrome. The whole dream was this idea of you could go to YouTube, watch the trailer for a game, and then in the click of the button, just be playing it instantly. Major benefits, of course, being a low barrier at entry without having to buy the latest graphics card or console, and you can play the latest games with just an internet connection and a screen. There's no downloads, no installs, no patching. Utilizing Google's server and infrastructure, games would no longer be limited by home PCs and consoles. It'd basically be like having a $10,000 gaming PC in your pocket with you at all times. It's a cool idea. This would let them make games better looking and at larger sizes and scale than ever before, all running at 4K, 60 frames per second, and utilizing the cloud system with the server and client being on the same network, removing a lot of player limitations that we see in modern games. So they talked about this idea of, you know, modern battle royales have 100 players in them. Imagine a battle royale with thousands or hundreds of thousands of players. But even with this initial reveal and my early excitement, there were still some pretty big concerns. Obviously, the bottleneck moves from your hardware to your internet connection. So being able to play games of 4K requires internet speeds of 25 megabits per second, which, mind you, is double the average internet speed here in the US. And you have concerns with latency, or the time it takes between putting in inputs, sending that data to the cloud, and then getting a response back in your game. Now, there was some early Digital Foundry testing that put the latency not too far behind the Xbox One X, but also not at the cream of the crop, and these latency issues would matter less for games like RPGs or turn-based strategy games, but more for competitive first-person shooters or fighting games. And besides the latency, a poor internet connection also brings up video compression issues like artifacting and pixelation, and that is all forgetting this idea of bandwidth caps, which are very real and alive from internet service providers today. Definitely some pros and some cool ideas, but there were some major obvious downsides as well. But the one big question mark that we had out the gate was the business model. We weren't sure what it was going to be. Well, we now have some clarification, and it doesn't look great. The sales pitch for Google Stadia is getting worse and worse as time goes on. Initially, people were guessing that this was going to be like a Netflix of gaming, where you'd pay a monthly sub, and then you just have access to this huge library of games that you could play anywhere on any device. I mean, it's an appealing idea, even with all the downsides that we just mentioned. But now we have a clear picture of what Google Stadia entails, thanks to some updates to their website and a recent AMA. So we now know that to play games at the advertised 4K resolution, 60 frames per second, you are going to have to pay a monthly subscription for Stadia Pro. You will then have to buy games at the full retail price on top of that, and you don't have access to this big library of free games. In a recent Reddit AMA, Stadia's product director said, "To be clear, Stadia Pro is not Netflix for games like some people have mentioned. A closer comparison would be like Xbox Live Gold or PlayStation Plus. The Pro subscribers get games, roughly one free game per month, give or take, starting with Destiny 2. Yay?" Mind you, Destiny 2 is going free to play in just a couple of months, so that's an interesting selling point. So if you head on over to their website, we actually get a list of comparisons. So their Stadia Pro, for $9.99 a month, you get the 4K 60. You have to buy your games on top of that with one free game to start, Destiny 2, and then you get discounts on some select games. Now there is Stadia Base as well, which will be a free service streaming at 1080p 60, buying your games, no free games, and no discounts. Obviously, there's the benefit that you can play these games anywhere from any device. That is good. But outside of that, the service isn't really appealing. There's no library of free games for your monthly sub. It basically just seems like an online store that has you streaming games instead of downloading them, and as a result, giving you a worse gameplay experience. Like if you compare this service to the Xbox Game Pass, which give you free access to hundreds of games for that monthly sub, and then you also get free first-party titles at launch, launch. But instead, Stadia Pro is saying pay us $120 a year on top of buying full price games, and then you only get one free game. They're slowly going to be adding games over time at about the rate of one a month. The benefit is that you can play this stuff anywhere, but you have to deal with the latency problems like we mentioned, which include things like input lag and image quality concerns. You still have to deal with data caps, and then there's the big question of game ownership. Not like this is a new question or something exclusive to Stadia. Game ownership is a question for basically all of these online services. And myself doing a lot of PC gaming, I don't really own any of the games of the hundreds that I have in my Steam library. Those could technically just disappear at one point. Game ownership, honestly, I know that's a major sticking point for a lot of people. It's not my biggest concern because typically when I'm done playing games, I'm done playing games. So if games that I played 5 years ago disappeared from my Steam library, I don't think I would really care that much, but I do understand why it's a big concern for people who do like to revisit those games at some point, or at least want the assurance that they could if they wanted to, even if they never do. This is just, it's bringing up this interesting thing where I went from being genuinely excited at the idea of Google Stadia when it was announced earlier this year. I wasn't gonna say it was like a premier way to play games. It's always better to play on local hardware. You get that better input experience, you get the better graphical fidelity, but I could certainly see a benefit to playing anywhere at any point. And the idea of like a Netflix for games where, think if Google Stadia was pay us $15 a month, we've got hundreds of games that you can play instantly for free at any time, and we'll be partnering with games companies to give you free access when new games launch in the future as well. It's a cool concept because you see that with music streaming services like iTunes, you see that with video and movie streaming services like Netflix. We feel like it was a matter of time until someone did it right with gaming. But Google Stadia isn't going to be that. If you want to stream at the selling thing that they're saying, which is 4K 60, you have to pay that monthly fee. You're going to get an access to a library of free games with that monthly fee, but it's starting off at a game that's going free to play in a couple of months, and you still have to buy your games at full price. So yeah, it's just an online store that lets you play games from your phones in a worse experience than you would get if you just downloaded that game and played it on your console or on your PC. There are many other benefits to it as well, and I don't want to discount them. Yes, you can play these games anywhere on a device that runs Google Chrome. You also don't have to buy the latest hardware. No buying the newest graphics cards to run games or buying the latest consoles, and you have the benefit of you don't have to install games, you don't have to download or patch games ever again. Those are some big benefits. Now, the biggest draw that I still see with Stadia, and this is where I think Stadia still has a chance to be a big thing potentially, is the Google servers. The fact that Google servers are going to be running these games unlocks huge potential. The idea is games at a size, scale, visual fidelity, and with a player count that would just be impossible to run on your console or on your home PC. And that is a cool idea, but that requires developers to make those games. That's going to basically require Google to pay developers to make games exclusively for Stadia, or that these game companies will be making games that will be playable on your console or PC, but then have Stadia exclusive features, like maybe they double the player count, or the graphics just go through the roof because they're running on Stadia hardware. All of that stuff on top of the fact that yes, the biggest difference is that you just need your phone or your tablet or anything that runs Chrome and a controller to be able to play these games. You don't have to be sitting in front of your TV or your computer screen to play the latest Assassin's Creed or Call of Duty. You can play it out in the park with a controller and your phone. That sounds like a horrible experience to me, but I definitely see a market for it. I see the potential. I do see the benefits. It's just their business model. As we learn more, it gets less and less appealing. Like, if I'm just gonna be playing a game at 1080p and I have to buy it anyways, I'm not gonna get involved with Stadia. I would rather have that experience on my home hardware where the gameplay is gonna be 1,000 times better and the image quality is gonna be 1,000 times better because it doesn't rely on my internet connection. And we're also still forgetting the fact that this is gonna exclude a lot of people in the world that have poor internet connections or have data caps. I think the major takeaway for me is it was hard enough to convince me to be interested in streaming games games because I know the experience is going to be worse, that this business model just kind of puts a stake through the heart of the idea. At this point, I think the only way you're going to get a ton of people interested in Stadia is if they have that killer app. If they can get a company to make this unbelievable battle royale with 10,000 players in it, or this huge massive MMO, or this big social game, have experiences that you just can't get anywhere else. Because if I'm just going to be playing the next Call of Duty streaming with input lag and worse video quality, there's no use case for me. But I'm also someone who primarily just plays my games at home. I don't think I'm as much of the target audience here. I understand that. And I was hoping that Stadia would have a portion of their offerings that would make sense for me. But right now, unless they get a game that is just unplayable anywhere else, Stadia at this point basically seems useless for me. So I can see how there's going to be an audience for it, and I do understand its benefits, but with all of the issues of playing games while streaming, on top of their business model of the fact that I still have to pay full price for those games, and if I want them at 4K, I'm gonna have to pay $120 a year, and they don't have this huge back catalog of free games like Xbox or PlayStation do, I don't see the point. It just doesn't make any sense to me. So I guess I'm just at the point where I'm realizing that this doesn't seem like it's for me. And what they're offering right now isn't good enough. And I was interested in Stadia. I knew it wasn't going to be the perfect gameplay experience, but I was interested. So that's kind of a bummer. But what are you gonna do? Best of luck, Google. Hope you manage to figure this out. But at least for someone like me, the offerings of Stadia right now, it just doesn't seem like enough for me to be interested in playing games while streaming and still having to buy them at full price and not having access to a catalog of games and needing to pay a monthly fee. And who cares if the streaming is in 4K if I'm dealing with input lag and artifacting and stuff? Like, thanks for the 4K pixelation. Appreciate it.